What he composed himself real fast. He hit a home run on the next pitch or the next two pitches. Same at bat. How about that? Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming back to another recording of Foul Ball Safety Now Talks. I'm here with Brianna Ludwig. For people tuning in for the first time, I started Foul Ball Safety Now about 6 years ago. I'm working with a journalist by the name of Brendan for about 6 years. And everything that you see at Foul Ball Safety Now has everything to do with all the work that we've been producing. We're very excited to bring this to new people all the time because there's many baseball fans, 70, 80 million baseball fans, who may have not known about any of this information and maybe thought about the foul ball experience as only fun. But we're here to do something else. We're here to give everyone a lot of information. We are confident that most people did not know about our research, and we feel like they may have something to say once learning about that research. So it's been ongoing. It's very rewarding. I've been working with Brendan, also with Brianna for about a year now, and we've been doing a lot of recordings, people who bring on interesting perspectives and interesting questions to us, which we'll be doing in a few minutes. I just wanted to bring up some news that I think people should learn about. When you go to Foul Ball Safety Now, we put up a new tab called Freedom for Baseball Players. And once people read that, it's going to acknowledge that baseball players that play on the collegiate level may have felt compromised about their own experience playing the game, maybe not feeling 100% secure that the sport they were participating in had something to do with the element of danger. But since I was contacted by a college player months ago, I had written 4 letters to the Queens College administration and did not single them out for being the only one that may be in a situation where the student athletes are playing games feeling compromised. I kind of wanted to let them know they were part of the bigger picture. But 4 letters later, and now a response from the Queens College newspaper is telling me we may get a conversation going. So I want everyone to go to the tab at Foul Ball Safety Now. It's called Queens College Investigation. And I also want people to go to the Freedom for Baseball Players. So we know not only Queens College may have a situation where their baseball field is on campus and where their balls may leave the field and hit children or college students. In this case, in Queens, there's an elementary school right next to the field. And that's what the baseball players at Queens College were concerned about. So there may be 500 colleges would have a similar situation where when they have practice in games, balls may be leaving and going over the sides. And unfortunately, on the professional level, we learned in Modesto, California, not too long ago, people can also check out the tab Unknown Modesto. The Unknown Modesto talks about, unfortunately, a woman who was outside the ballpark, similar to like many colleges may have that. And certainly 169 college baseball professional fields may have lower sides where balls hit the pavement or hit a window, or in the case of Modesto, it hit a woman in the head. We were contacted by a law firm, and we learned a few months later that that case was settled. But for at least 2 summers, from July of 23, when the incident happened with the woman getting hurt in Modesto, until the summer of July of 2025, I don't think anyone really knew in Modesto that this actually occurred because it wasn't reported in the Modesto newspapers. And we wrote 3 letters so people can see what we put together in the Unknown Modesto tab. We're just trying to put all information on the table so people can know how business is being conducted and let people decide for themselves how they want to enter into this conversation. That's our news for now. We want to alleviate the burden that players feel. We outlined this for players who play college to talk about this and get the monkey off their back. We may not be up to date on how all student athletes are feeling, about this issue, whether they think about it all the time or whether they're not thinking about it at all. But I don't think we're overstepping at any level. I think we're reminding everyone that certainly it's happening in Queens College. Maybe it's happening at 500 other campuses where these student athletes are talking amongst themselves. Let's have a discussion. That's what this has always been about, effectively beginning the conversation. And it's the three of us talking now, and I'm looking forward to hearing our guest. Brianna, do you wanna bring on our guest for today, please?
Our guest today is an actor, a writer, and a stand-up comic, Tim Ferran. Welcome, Tim.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, Tim. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for being part of this with us.
Yeah, it's great.
We're happy to hear your, prepared questions. I know you got familiar with this topic not too long ago, so we're just curious where you wanna take this conversation.
Well, probably the most interesting of my series of questions here. I live in Arizona, and they have the Cactus League for
Yeah.
spring training, and it's a bunch. I think it's like 13 to 15 teams, but the stadiums are really small, and so there's a lot of foul balls. And I just wondered, is the netting that you guys talk about on your website
Mhm.
that you'd like to extend to the foul poles. Is that in any of these small Cactus League stadiums?
What we had done some time back is in 2020, we made calls to all the Grapefruit League and Cactus League teams, and that's what they called that time in spring training, which you know. And we asked all the ballparks for their netting status, and most box offices were very accommodating and telling us what they knew, where their nets ended, whether it was to the end of the dugout or to down to the foul pole or somewhere in between. I'm not in a position, Tim, to tell you whether the nets are extended even down to the foul pole, that it's good to go. I'm more about getting some oversight or some outside agency to tell you and your family that we're good to go. There's no accountability. Really no explanation on how they do their nets and the level of effectiveness it brings. Sure, improvements are good, Tim. We're all about improvements and upgrades, but is it really a solution? So I'm not in a position, Tim, to tell you what is safe. I will leave that to an outside agency which has never been part of the equation.
Netting that would extend that far from a
Mhm,
visual standpoint. I know,
mhm,
like hockey is a good example. They use
mhm.
plexiglass, and while it would be a lot more expensive, you'd have less of an obstructed view, I guess is my point.
I'm not sure if you're a big hockey guy or not, but about 20 years ago, they really went from the plexiglass, which was such high behind the goalie area, but they did actually install nets that go really high to prevent those pucks from coming in like lasers. So they made a change. It was after, unfortunately, a little girl died, got killed by a hockey puck in 2002. But the plexiglass, where it's usually the slap shots and the wrist shots and the attempted shots on goal are going really hard at the net. There's still deflections to the side where pucks still reach the seats and people could have been hurt over the last 20 years. I have not been following hockey, but any solution that an outside agency suggested would be a solution. That would be incredible. I would be like, this is great. Look what we did. We inspired, a scientific innovation solution, whatever it may be, or basically, or just nets. But Tim, I think today even if people are still worried whether the experience is the same or not, we're at a place right now with technology where I think even baseball fans who may have had to adjust to the netting in their seats have been fine with it.
Good to know. Does Major League Baseball keep track of the number of foul balls, or does anybody keep track of it from a statistical analysis
Yeah,
standpoint?
we have something on the website, Foul Ball Safety Now, called Exhibit A1. And that was from 2019, but Brendan and I, the journalist I've been working with now for 6 years, we included some more notes into that report, made it into our own report, and we call it Exhibit A1. It demonstrates just how many foul balls there were in a 9-inning game in 2019. And we cut that number in half. It was, I think, 53 foul balls per game. So we cut that in half to 25, more than half, let's say, just so it didn't look like we were inflating any kind of numbers. By having 2,400 games a year in Major League Baseball, a little more than 2,400, and 5 times as many more games in all of the other professional leagues, similar ballparks that you experience in Arizona, where they're small and intimate and may have a few thousand people in the seats. That's 199 teams that we can sort of get almost to the penny on just how many balls go to certain sections on how fast they even go. So Exhibit A1, it's almost like a chart that if you open that chart up, you can see for yourself the percentages of all of those foul balls that go, like 20% of the balls go in that area, 20% of the balls go in that area. It really begs and cries out for all of us to just know how fast were they going. And it also demonstrates that some of these zones are considered hot zones. So there's 14,000 games times 25, if we're using that number, that's 350,000 foul balls. That's a lot of foul balls. And you can almost figure out for yourself the percentages of those foul balls that went into those exposed areas in those years. And you're going to come up with some sort of number or some sort of opinion based on reviewing that. So almost people could go back down their own memories and see for themselves. And certainly I'll bring you caught up to speed on who's done what since, because that's what we do at Foul Ball Safety Now. But the 2019 experience is certainly an eye opener if you want to take a look at that.
Wow.
We knew at the time in some of these hot zones, there were at the time this report came out, there was at least 70 plus cities that had no netting past end of dugouts. There's still somewhere between 30 and 40. And when people see that Exhibit A video, which is that 5-minute ESPN production, demonstrated her horrific 5-minute video of balls past the end of dugouts doing serious damage to human beings and children. And why is this still happening today? Why would this still be allowed? But that's what we do, Tim. We're trying to put all this information on the table. It may be a big elephant in the room that nobody wants to discuss, but we will. And we'll continue to do that.
It's worth noting that the MLB is not required to report human injuries, even though they track everything. They're tracking the exit velocity of the ball, they're tracking how fast the pitch was thrown. So, any studies that have been attempted into finding out how many fans are actually struck by a foul ball, the MLB hasn't been very compliant in releasing that information about the number of fan injuries. But what we've started doing at Foul Ball Safety Now is we've started compiling our own report. So on the website, you'll see under Incidents 2025, we have sadly a very long list of self reported injuries because what fans are doing nowadays, everybody has their cell phone and they're taking videos of what they're seeing. They're seeing the fan get struck or they're posting a picture of something that happened to them or black eye. This happened to me last night and I didn't hear anything from this team. So they're posting things like that. And we're actually able now in this age of technology more than ever before to know just how often this is happening. And we're finding things every day.
Yeah, but one of the things that, struck me is, and I don't know if ballparks do this, they probably not, but to take a newborn or even a 2 or 3-year-old, when they talked about on your website, when they talked about
Yeah.
heading, I'm wondering if, should ballparks say, you can't be less than 10 to go to a game? I know that would be, it cuts into their attendance and everything else.
Mhm.
Families,
Mhm.
they wanna take everybody, but, in view of this,
Mhm.
it's really to think about.
Yeah, you raise a very important question and certainly worthy of a conversation. I think once everyone learns the legacy and the history of how business as usual was conducted, I think we're going to raise some eyebrows. And maybe people would have said years ago, if they just knew, or agencies would have gotten involved long ago if they just knew more about the data that just never was really shared. Baseball knows to the penny, pretty much for the last decade or two, Tim, just how many people have been injured because there's reports filed. Unless, again, they don't report themselves to first aid, then maybe those go undocumented. But there's certainly enough recorded data at every ballpark. NBC did a study in 2019, and I thought when I got involved and learned about that NBC study, I thought there was gonna be some real changes. It implied how many people reported to first aid over a 7 or 8-year period from 2012 to 2019, and if you extrapolated all of the other teams, the number would have been in the range of around 5,000 people would have reported to first aid. These were first independent contractors who worked for the 30 teams. They'll show up the day of the game, and they'll have, like, a small staff just in case somebody slips and falls or gets hit by a foul ball. They're ready just in case. So they're usually outside agencies, entities. 4 of the 30 of those first aid independent contractors took part with NBC, and they reported the data. So if you took the data that I think it was like 175 per team, so that's 4, and then if you took the other 26, maybe the number's around 5,000. 30 times 175, something like that, which would be a little more than 5,000, who reported to first aid mainly because of foul ball injuries. Doesn't mean they all had busted eye sockets like people that I've met at Foul Ball Safety Now. But it does not include 5 times as many more games that go on in all the other professional leagues. And Brendan and I also, we've newspaper clipped, speaking of the children, Tim, we've newspaper clipped at least 45 children since 2008 that got really hurt by foul balls. And most of those were accounted for on the major league level. And again, a lot of media wasn't available at the lower leagues years ago, and people weren't self-reporting their injuries as they are now. We just want people to kind of get a sense that business as usual has been done this way up until now. How should business as usual proceed once people get in on the conversation? Age limits, transparency about risks, letting people know that, in that particular week, in that particular section, they could expect that many line drives going at 85 or higher. Let people know what they're up against. Share with them over the winter time, Tim, exactly what happened the year before and what they expect the next year. And then all kinds of conversations are going to come. And even if it's mud on their face, that's just so be it. How much mud on the face, I think people would really like to know. That's basically what we all want to know. And then we can move on as a society and maybe get some transparency going.
Yeah. The other thing I really, especially when I read on your website that, toddlers with severe head injuries, the guys that hit them, the batters, the amount of guilt those guys must have. It's like being a boxer and killing somebody in the ring.
Sure. Very strong.
Hopefully those guys see some kind of counseling. It's got to impact your ability to play to a certain degree.
The most recent example I have is the Shohei Ohtani. On the website of Foul Ball Safety Now, we have a tab called Shohei Ohtani Vulnerability. And what that shows is Shohei Ohtani in the World Series. You may not have noticed this, Tim, but he hit a line drive down the line, and maybe he thought he had just hit a security guard or a fan, and he cringed. And he was oh my goodness, right? As we all would if we almost were on the road and hit somebody, we would pull over to the side and compose ourselves. And what he composed himself real fast. He hit a home run on the next pitch or the next 2 pitches. Same at bat. How about that? So he got right back to it. So when you said, is there any kind of hangover effect? If they directly hit somebody, any human being probably will have a major hangover effect, as you should. But why are near misses part of the day-to-day experience for the baseball players? And it goes back to the 20-year-olds at Queens College, why they have to feel like that should be part of their student experience. We want to take that away from them. The guys like Ohtani or the major leaguers, they've been near missing people all their lives potentially, and unfortunately, they're set in their ways. But I think we can do a lot better.
I had some other questions, but they're kind of, the type of netting and things like that, but I think that's more being in the weeds than anything else, and it's what you folks have had. That's really something for Major League Baseball to sort through and get after.
Yeah, that's
But
what these conversations are trying to do, provoke thought and provoke interest, and the 70, 80 million baseball fans, I think, would be curious to learn about how business as usual was done years and years and years for years and years and years, and they may, have something to say that there was a lack of information, and we wanna just present all the information. And then everyone could decide for themselves, or government agencies could decide whether they should have heard about this 50 years ago after a 14-year-old boy died at Dodger Stadium. We've interviewed, Tim, probably close to 80 people now. We've interviewed like 20 victims, people who've been seriously injured by foul balls, including 2 children. And 2 of the people we interviewed, unfortunately, were blinded in one eye. And another person we interviewed was a gentleman who, unfortunately, his wife was killed at the Dodger game in 2018. And you get to hear these stories. Another child who was now a 30-year-old adult with 2 children has psychological, mental, physical issues as a 30-something-year-old woman. I'll just share briefly with you about her. She was a little girl going to a game with her family, and she was struck by a ball, and she was unconscious for 4 or 5 days. And hearing
oh
that,
no,
it's pretty shocking, yeah. And she tells us that when she started getting better, the team would reach out and offer them free tickets, the family free tickets, and for a few years, the family took the tickets. But I think she's even experiencing as an adult that maybe she's going through something like gift remorse, meaning she's feeling like maybe her parents should have just addressed the team and tell the team, "Don't let it happen to anybody else, and we don't need your tickets." I heard that from somebody else who was an adult who didn't have the same sort of lingering, lasting effects, who asked the team to get married on the field. Like, some of these people that self-report their injuries, they have black and blue marks, but they're better in 2 weeks. Other people, long-term concussions, and like this young lady who's a parent, has lingering effects for forever. People can explore more of foul ball safety now, and we want everyone to have something to say about the topic as a fan, as not a fan, as an agency. We had an OSHA employee, Tim, on not too long ago. She was also on a similar platform that you're on, looking for different opportunities in different areas, but she happened to be a government employee, and she was shocked to learn about what we were sharing with her, and she was almost like taking an intake about, you know, maybe stepping up as an OSHA employee and looking into the matter. They look out for the workplace
right,
environment. So there's teenagers that might be working at the Cactus League, 16-year-olds in their first work selling hot dogs and being exposed. And, the team attendants, some of them are seniors that are helping with people find their seats, stuff like that. So we'll see where that goes, but it's just new. It's good to breathe life into something, Tim. And that's what I've been doing for 6 years. And we welcome people that could potentially serve as influencers beyond this call. But the fact that we have these recordings, people will learn about this issue, whether it was 3 months ago or 3 months from now. Our recordings will help form opinions, and we're excited to be part of that.
there are going to be people, the same people that kind of argued against electronic umpires, that say,
Okay.
it's part of the game, and it was so exciting. I went with my kid, and he caught a fly ball, and there was nothing that happened. And now he's got a souvenir. I could see as bizarre as that is, part of that argument coming back to it's a tradition of the game.
I think once people know everything, I think most baseball fans, as much as they love the game and their preserved memories, I think most of the people do not work for Major League Baseball and would be very open to learning about anything they may have missed that was relevant to their baseball experience. I think so. I'm going to go on that. And once they say, okay, tell me something I didn't know, I'll try. And then I'll say to those fans that are worried about the new chapter and what's ahead and how are we going to keep that expectation of going to the game and catching a foul ball alive at the same time protecting people. I have a lot of different ideas which we can present now or on a conference, but so many other people would as well. You know what happens at a town hall. Everyone's got something to say. So everyone's gonna say, "Just give them a ball." All right. Just have a soft catch with let them have a soft toss catch with the baseball player. All right. Let's if there's 50 foul balls per game, let's give out 150 baseballs, and everyone's gonna feel satisfied. Sort of like transition into this is the new phase of the fan experience. I think we can do it, Tim. The fact of the matter is we really have to do it.
Yeah.
Until then, I'll be barking.
Guys have had line drives go to the head of the pitcher, and all he had was a
Sure.
baseball cap, and those
Yep.
guys get knocked out and, had
Oh, yeah.
severe injury for the same kind of impact, and catchers now have a lot more protection than they used to. So it shows that the sport has adapted a little bit to those types of things.
I think once the fans are enlightened about everything they missed, I think you're gonna hear some noise. But I just don't feel like we've gotten there yet. But it's not really fair for us to be the final judge and jury. But I think what we can do is bring it to the court of public opinion and let them determine exactly what they feel. I have an expression I use, Tim. We're delivering an epiphany of an awareness. And if you want to go anywhere further than awareness to a higher level of, spice, to an epiphany of outrage, well, I'll leave that up to you. But we just want to present as we know. And I think we're doing okay. And we'll keep doing it.
You've laid out a pretty nice roadmap about the whole thing. So
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate that. Brianna, what do you have for Tim?
Yeah, so earlier in the episode in the show, we heard Jordan refer to this as the elephant in the room, right? The foul ball crisis. We've heard that from players as well and just people inside the game. It's kind of this unspoken topic that everyone is aware of. It's this pressure, the tension that they're carrying, and they don't really want to address it directly. So, Tim, as a comedian, how do you navigate telling the truth about an uncomfortable topic and making it digestible for a mass audience? And what can the MLB learn from that?
that is tough, especially now and I've had a bunch of comics, we've had discussions on that informally, in that, political humor. Do you stay away from it, or do you one draws the line, and there's kind of a split with comics of what's considered abusive and what's considered just poking fun at someone. That is one of those things. I mean, there's obviously nothing funny about a toddler being killed by a line drive foul ball. It's hard to see the humor in things like that. But that's hard for any comic, myself, to navigate. I try to, I do a lot of stuff with cats and dogs, because they're people relate to that kind of stuff. And the other thing is, from what I'm retired and live in a retirement community, and, swore that I would never be one of those guys that runs around with an old guy's rule t-shirt. It's and the golf cart and the whole 9 yards. But, you can poke fun, I think, at people. This is hard because it really is, it's a serious problem. It's not one to make light of, but I can see people saying, "Oh, it's, about the only analogy that I have," and probably the baseball park, is people that, have a few beers versus people that get drunk and obnoxious. It's the same, the people that say, "Oh, foul balls, hey, it's great that my kid caught one. it doesn't happen all that frequently. So, it does become the elephant. Let's not talk about it because it's a terrible thing. But it does have to be addressed, as people when they lose their livelihood. And, like I said too, I thought about, gee, the player that if you hit a foul ball and, you killed a toddler, anybody with a sense of compassion would really screw you up, It's like, you may quit the sport because of that. It's a tough road to hoe. There are people, Dave Chappelle comes to mind, that,
Uh-huh.
hey, I'm gonna say what I think is funny and everybody else, can live with it. But yeah, but when it's offensive to people, Dave, it's not that funny, It's so
Sure.
it's a tough road to be on. It really is.
It's okay. It's okay. This is what we're doing. We're exploring how to make this conversation effective. The people within the game really don't want to come to the conference. But the people outside the game, the 70, 80 million people that paid their admission, they should be more than open to learning anything they may have missed. We're excited to resonate with those folks. And then they could all decide what those experiences were like and what the new experience should be. We're a democracy here. We're going to continue rocking that way, And good news, Tim, the 2 children or the children that we referred to, fortunately, none of the children that we know of have ever died, the toddlers. We know of 2 adults that have died, both at Dodger Stadium. One was actually a teenager, a 14-year-old boy, and Mrs. Goldblum back in 2018. There's long-term effects and there's sadness, and we've met some of these people who were children, or at least children at the time. And again, we get personally connected with them. The journalist I've been working with, Brendan, now for 6 years, we've interviewed, nearly 80 people, and they all bring an interesting perspective, whether they're victims, including Erwin Goldblum, who's been part of our interviews, and the baseball players who share their perspectives with us. One more thing I'll add is that you had said, do they get the support? I would hope that the team psychologist or the mental health professionals within the teams have the foresight to know that these players will be experiencing that sooner at some point in their career as an individual or as a collective team. So that's another question. Glad you brought it up, Tim. We're going to talk about that. These mental health professionals, they should probably have the foresight that some of their professionals are experiencing this workplace environment. And what do you share with them about that? But maybe we'll start on that one on a different conversation.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
You brought it up,
That's
so we'll continue. We'll continue that one. I've addressed that one before within the inner circles, and we're trying to also get some more information on what those protocols would be before the game, during the game, and unfortunately after these things do occur. It's a kind of like a catch-22 for the mental health professional who works for the team. But if you have
uh,
more thoughts on that, Tim, we wanna hear about it.
baseball offered to come on, on this podcast and talk about it.
I think, again, within the circles, not anxious to talk to us.
Yeah.
But we will amongst fans because they're like, last I checked, they haven't paid me a dime. So I think they're more willing. Unfortunately, that's the majority, and that's the one people who support the community of baseball, the workplace, the industry. So I think this was really constructive and productive. And Tim, we really want to thank you. And thanks again for this time together. And I look forward to everyone checking out Foul Ball Safety Now. You'll see all our latest research. And we want freedom for the baseball players, and we want them to feel good. Please check out that link. Thank you again, everyone. See you next time.